You believe a silent heart can hide its pain from ancient hunger. You never expect a king to notice the mark you never understood. Her name was Alara, a human servant born in the cold villages beyond the Crimson Forest, a place where the wind carried stories of blood and broken promises. She worked in the great vampire court where the chandeliers dripped with frozen candlelight and the royal throne watched every heartbeat like prey. She kept her head low and her voice small, carrying silver cups filled with dark wine and prepared blood for royal banquets. The vampires ignored her most days, treating her like dust beneath their black boots, except when they tasted the blood she served. Their eyes glowed with hunger as they sensed life passing beneath their tongues, yet they respected the law, no feeding from the staff. It was the rule set by the vampire king himself. Whoever disobeyed died painfully without any chance of mercy. Alara never questioned why such a law existed. She only knew its consequence, a reminder carved into the marble pillars with ancient runes of execution. She had seen humans disappear before, bodies dragged through secret tunnels, whispers of biting against the law. So she worked quietly, carried trays with steady hands, and walked the paths of cold stone floors with practiced caution. But Alara carried something inside her that she never spoke of, a burning mark on her neck that appeared when she turned 8, shaped like two crescent moons facing each other. The villagers whispered that it was cursed. Her mother called it a blessing. Her father feared it like death. They covered it with cloth, then with ash, then with herbs that smelled like bitter rain. Nothing faded it, nothing explained it. After her parents died, the mark remained, and so did the questions. In the vampire court, she hid it beneath a black scarf, always tight, always perfectly arranged. No one ever asked why, and she prayed no vampire ever smelled whatever curse lived beneath her skin. Her heart raced every time a noble walked too close, every time their eyes narrowed like they sensed something forbidden. Tonight was the king's feast, held under a blood moon that looked heavier than usual, like the sky itself feared what it watched. The castle trembled with excitement, though none of the vampires smiled. Their faces were statues carved from storm clouds. Alara approached the throne with a tray of blood prepared especially for the king. King Vladimir sat on a throne of pale bone, wrapped in a black coat that touched the floor like living night. His hair was silver like the moon reflecting on steel, and his eyes were the color of quiet murder. No emotion moved his face, yet each breath he took controlled the entire room. Nobody dared move before he did. Alara bowed with practiced grace, her heart beating like distant thunder. She placed the cup before him, but the instant the king's fingers brushed the glass, something snapped. The room grew colder, the candles shivered, and every vampire turned toward Alara as if a hunting instinct awakened in their veins. The king's red eyes narrowed slightly, not at the cup, not at the blood, but at her. She felt his gaze like ice crawling under her scarf. Her throat tightened. The mark beneath her skin burned like a hidden flame. She tried to pull away, but her knees weakened. The king finally spoke, his voice deep enough to crush silence. "Remove the cloths." Every vampire froze. Guards tightened their grip on their spears. Alara's hands shook as if her bones were breaking. No human could refuse a king's command. Refusing meant death, and she had never been brave enough to seek it. Her fingers reached for her scarf, trembling with fear, yet something else stirred inside her, a strange warmth like the mark itself was waking. She pulled the cloth away. The mark glowed beneath the pale moonlight. Two crescent shapes, bright as red amber, pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. A whisper moved through the court, fear mixed with awe. The king stood up. Vampires gasped like they had seen a ghost rise from a grave. Kings did not stand for servants, not even for nobles. The king stepped toward her, his boots echoing across the marble floor and his eyes locked onto the mark as if he had waited centuries to see it again. His voice dropped to something fragile, something haunted. "Who gave you that mark?" Ilara almost collapsed. She did not know. She had never known. Before she could answer, the mark burned hotter, and somewhere outside the castle walls, wolves began to howl. Wolves howled beyond the crimson forest, loud enough to rattle the stained windows of the vampire court. The sound did not feel wild, it felt summoned, like something ancient had been awakened the moment Alara revealed her mark. Vampires who usually stood like marble statues now stepped back cautiously. Even the royal guards trembled, gripping their spears with both hands. Alara felt small in the center of the throne hall, her exposed mark burning like fire pressed against her skin. King Vladimir stopped only a short distance away from her. His cold gaze did not show anger, hunger, or curiosity, but something deeper: fear, the silent, buried kind that powerful creatures never admit. Alara held her scarf tightly in her fist, wanting to cover herself, wanting to disappear, yet unable to move. The king slowly reached his hand toward her, not to touch but to sense. His fingers hovered near the mark, and she felt the air vibrate as the fire beneath her skin flared. He withdrew his hand immediately, like touching her would cost him his life. The council nobles whispered frantically, "It cannot be. That lineage was destroyed." The ancient blood should be extinct. Their voices grew louder as the mark glowed brighter, but Alara heard none of the words clearly. All she knew was fear, hot and heavy, crawling down her spine. She finally found her voice, small but shaking. My king, I do not know what it means. King Vladimir studied her face in a long, piercing silence. His lips parted, but before he could speak, the elderly court advisor stepped forward. Lord Murath, a vampire older than legends, leaned on a staff carved with symbols of forgotten empires. His voice was brittle like cracked stone. She must be tested. Gasps rose from the crowd. Testing was not a request, it was a sentence. It meant magic, blood, pain, and truth that could not be hidden. Alara's pulse raced, her breath turned shallow. She tried to step back, but the advisor raised his hand and dark energy twisted through the air. Invisible chains coiled around her wrists, binding her without touch. She could still stand, still breathe, but she could not escape. King Vladimir's eyes darkened. Murath, she is a servant, not a prisoner. The advisor bowed slightly, though his tone stayed firm. If she carries that mark, then she is not merely human. If it is real, she must be claimed or destroyed before moonrise touches her blood. Alara's knees weakened, claimed or destroyed. There were no other choices. The king did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened as if he hated the options, yet he could not deny the truth of ancient law. The advisor continued, louder this time so every vampire could hear. The twin crescent mark belongs only to the blood chosen by the lunar sovereign, the one destined to awaken under a hunter's moon. Vampires stepped even farther back. Some pushed their chairs away, others bared their fangs with fear, not hunger. The air thickened with panic. Alara did not understand any of it. What is a lunar sovereign? She whispered. The advisor did not answer her. He looked only at the king. If she survives the awakening, she becomes bound to royal blood. If she fails, she dies. The mark pulsed again, brighter, stronger. Alara winced, pressing her palm to her neck. She spoke through her pain. Please, I do not want this. I only serve the court. King Vladimir's expression softened for a brief, impossible moment, like he remembered something he lost long ago. You were born with it, you did not choose it. Alara's eyes filled with fear. Then what will you choose for me? The king turned to the council. His voice echoed like thunder cutting through smoke. Prepare the moon chamber. Every vampire bowed except Alara, who stood alone, bound by invisible power, trembling beneath her burning mark. The chamber doors would open soon, and whatever waited inside would change her blood forever. The moon chamber was hidden beneath the throne hall, buried under centuries of bone and stone. Vampires whispered that no light ever entered it except moonlight summoned through ancient magic. Alara had never heard of such a place, yet the guards dragged her toward it as if she were a threat more dangerous than the creatures surrounding her. She was not chained, yet she felt imprisoned. The invisible force binding her wrists tightened with every step, responding to her fear like it fed on it. Her heart pounded against her ribs, and the mark kept glowing beneath her skin, pulsing with a strange rhythm as if it was alive. The moon chamber doors were carved from black marble, etched with symbols she could not read. Wolves howled again from outside the castle, answering something she could not understand. The sound shook her bones like distant thunder. The guards pushed the doors open, and cold air rushed out, smelling like frost and iron. Inside, flickering moonlight spilled across a circular floor covered in runes. No torches burned here, no candles, no fire, only moonlight and silence. Alara shivered. She felt as if the air itself watched her. Lord Murath stepped into the center of the chamber, leaning on his staff. King Vladimir remained near the entrance, his expression unreadable. Nobles crowded the steps above, watching her like she was a condemned spectacle. Murath raised his staff, his voice echoing beneath the stone. Alara of unknown blood, reveal your truth before the ancient moon. The runes on the floor brightened. The moonlight narrowed like a blade, falling directly on Alara. The invisible binding around her wrists dissolved, but she did not feel free. Her knees almost collapsed beneath the weight of the light. What must I do? She whispered. Nothing, Murath answered. Then he added with cruel honesty. If you are chosen, you will survive. If you are not, the moon will tear you apart. Alara's breath stopped. She closed her eyes, trying to remember anything that could explain the mark. Her mother's hands shaking as she wrapped her neck, her father whispering prayers she never understood, their fear, their secrecy. Was she meant to die like this, without answers, without identity, without choice? The runes began to spin, light rising like silver fire around her. Alara clutched her throat, but her fingers burned the moment they touched the mark. The light pierced through her lungs, her veins, her heart. She gasped, teeth clenched, tears forming as her body trembled uncontrollably. Vampires leaned forward, some fascinated, some terrified. Murath whispered, the awakening begins. But Alara did not feel awakening. She felt breaking. Her body shook violently, her voice cracked as she cried out, yet no scream escaped her. Pain swallowed sound. The mark blazed, blindingly bright, burning through her flesh without flame. Vladimir moved forward instinctively, but Murath blocked him with the staff. Interference will kill her. The king's eyes narrowed with anger, yet he stopped. Alara, trembling on the floor, felt her vision blur. The light rushed into her bloodstream, flooding her senses. She felt every beat of her heart like thunder, every breath like ice shards. She collapsed face first onto the cold stone, unable to move. But the moonlight did not release her. Instead, it seeped into her, filling her bones, filling her mind. And suddenly, the pain disappeared. She felt something else, something ancient, something familiar. Memories that were not hers. A castle burning under a red moon. A woman with the same mark, crowned in silver, crying as vampires bowed before her. A king kneeling at her feet. Betrayal, blood, wolves howling like gods. Alara gasped, eyes wide, staring at nothing yet seeing everything. The mark stopped glowing. The chamber flickered with quiet moonlight once more. Vampires held their breath, waiting. Murath lowered his staff, impressed and afraid. She survived. Alara struggled to stand, shaking, her voice broken but determined. I am not one of you, she whispered. Murath answered slowly. No, child, you are above us. The nobles recoiled in shock. Some bared their fangs, but not in hunger, in fear. The moon chamber door suddenly slammed shut as if a storm pushed it, though no wind had entered. The wolves outside howled louder, closer, like they were waiting for her command. King Vladimir finally spoke, his voice heavy with meaning. You carry the mark of the Lunar Queen. Your blood outranks mine. Alara stared at him, heart pounding, lost in the truth she never asked for. And the king, who ruled all vampires, bowed his head to her. The king's bow was not grand, not ceremonial, but slow and reluctant, as if the truth weighed more than his crown. Vampires above him trembled with disbelief. Some tried to stand taller, others shrank behind the cold stone rails, hiding their fangs like frightened children. Alara took one step backward. She never asked for power. She never asked to be feared. She never asked to be seen. Her hands shook at her sides and she struggled to breathe. She was a servant hours ago, invisible, silent, trying only to survive. Now ancient blood pulsed inside her like a forgotten storm, heavy with memories she could not control. King Vladimir finally rose, his voice steady but shadowed. You must leave the human quarters. You cannot stay among servants now. The words burned more than the mark ever had. She had no home among humans anymore. She had no place among vampires either. She was alone between two worlds, unwanted by both. Alara swallowed hard. I belong nowhere. The chamber's moonlight flickered, responding to her pain, and Murath stepped forward, his tone firm. The court must protect her. If other clans learn of her existence, they will hunt her or attempt to claim her. An unbound lunar bloodline will break the ancestral balance. The nobles erupted into angry whispers. She is not one of us. What if she commands us? She could be a weapon. Alara clenched her fists, overwhelmed. She did not want command, she did not want power. She looked at King Vladimir, desperate. Can I choose my life? His eyes softened, but the answer in them was clear. Not anymore. A heavy silence followed. Alara felt her chest tighten, tears threatening, but she refused to break in front of them. Servants were allowed to crumble, but royalty could not bleed openly. Murath continued, his staff glowing faintly. Her power is unstable. She must be bound before the next blood moon. A choice must be made soon. Alara's voice cracked. Bound to what? Murath looked at her as if she should already know. To a ruler, to a bloodline, to a king. The chamber filled with gasps. Vampires stared at her like a crown made of fire. Alara's heart pounded so violently she feared the mark would open her skin. Marriage, allegiance, sealing of blood, imprisonment disguised as duty. She had heard of ancient rituals whispered among kitchen workers, the dark unions that tied lives for eternity. I will not be forced. Her voice hit the stone walls like a blade. The moonlight pulsed, reacting to her defiance. The guard stepped back, unsure whether she would explode or command the sky to open. Murath raised his staff again. The lunar sovereign is not forced, she chooses. The court waited. Every eye burned into her, demanding a decision she did not understand, a destiny she did not want. Alara turned to the king, searching for something, mercy, guidance, anything human. Instead, she found something unexpected. Fear, but not fear of her. Fear for her. Vladimir's voice lowered, only for her to hear. If you choose no one, the clans will fight for you. Their war will destroy your village and every life you ever knew. Humans will suffer for your freedom. The truth shattered her. Choice was a beautiful lie. She was not free, even in choosing. The moonlight dimmed, waiting for her answer. But before she could speak, a crash echoed from above. The throne hall shook violently. The nobles panicked, running to the balcony rails. Wolves howled again, much closer. Claws scraped against the doors. Something powerful was climbing the castle walls. Vladimir stepped in front of Allura, fangs flashing at the scent in the air. They came for her. Murath whispered with dread. Someone else has sensed the mark. The doors above cracked as wolves snarled like soldiers, and a voice echoed through the castle like thunder breaking chains. The lunar blood belongs to us. Doors above burst open as if struck by a storm. Fragments of ancient wood splintered across the throne hall, scattering like dying birds. A cold wind rushed through the chamber, carrying the scent of wild forests and iron, thick with the promise of violence. Wolves poured into the hall, massive and silver-eyed, fur streaked with moonlit ash. They did not move like animals. They moved like warriors, silent, strategic, disciplined. Their claws scraped the stone as they spread out in a circle, guarding a single figure walking between them. He was tall, dressed in a cloak of dark fur and silver threads, eyes glowing like frozen orbs under the blood moon. His presence swallowed the air, not loud or demanding, but ancient, territorial, unchallenged. Every wolf bowed its head as he stepped forward. King Vladimir bared his fangs, not in hunger but in warning. Fenrir. Nobles gasped in terror. Alara had never heard the name, yet the chamber seemed to remember it. The moonlight trembled like it feared him. Fenrir, leader of the Moonbound clans, predator of vampires, keeper of forgotten bloodlines. His gaze traveled across the court, ignoring every vampire until it reached Alara. The moment his eyes met hers, the mark on her neck burned hotter, reacting not in pain but recognition, like it had been waiting for him. Alara stepped backward instinctively, but Vladimir moved with her, placing himself between them. Fenrir smiled slightly, amused. The Vampire King protects a lunar heir. Interesting. Murath slammed his staff on the floor, sparks igniting around the runes. The mark is bound to the court. You have no claim. Fenrir did not even look at him. She is not bound yet. The wolves growled in unison, their chests reverberating with fierce harmony. Alara's heart hammered in panic. She forced her voice out, thin and uncertain. What do you want from me? Fenrir's eyes softened, shockingly warm but dangerous still. Only what is owed. The Lunar Queen's blood belongs to the Moon clans. Our history, our protection, our throne. Alara shook her head, overwhelmed. I do not want a thrones. Fenrir's expression shifted, pity replacing power. None of your ancestors wanted a throne either. They died defending it. Vladimir's jaw tightened, his voice cut sharply. Her bloodline ended because your clans betrayed her. The wolves snarled immediately, as if insulted by the accusation. Fenrir did not move, but the air around him sharpened like ice. The court murdered the queen. Do not turn history into fable. Alara felt her breath stop. Every word struck like a blade, rewriting everything she had been told, every memory she had absorbed through the awakening. Vladimir growled. Your clans attacked her first. They forced her into magic she was not ready for. Fenrir stepped closer, wolves tightening their circle. She died because she trusted you. Moonlight shook violently, the runes cracked under the weight of the truth. Alara looked between them, her voice breaking. Stop, I do not care what happened. I do not want war for a fate I never chose. Fenrir turned to her gently, as if speaking to a child who had not learned her shadow yet. The world does not care what you want. Vladimir immediately spoke, his tone fierce. I care. The chamber fell silent. Wolves hesitated, nobles froze, even Murath looked shocked. Vladimir, feared by his own court, had never spoken such words, not to royalty, not to humans, not to anyone. Fenrir tilted his head slightly, intrigued. You would protect her from destiny. The king did not blink. I would protect her from being used. Alara stared at him, stunned. The mark pulsed softly, not in pain, but in response, as if acknowledging something ancient awakening in him too. Fenrir sighed, heavy with centuries of grief. Then she must choose who protects her, vampire or wolf, throne or moon, crown or pack. Alara trembled, trapped between worlds at war. She lifted her chin slightly, voice fragile but strong. What if I choose freedom? Fenrir and Vladimir whispered at the same time. There is no freedom for lunar blood. Outside, thunder rolled across the crimson forest. The blood moon climbed higher and the mark burned brighter. Time was running out. Her choice would decide her fate. And the fate of every creature that walked under the moon. Wolves closed in, forming a circle around Fenrir. The vampire guards surrounded Vladimir. Moonlight pulsed through the moon chamber like it had become a living heartbeat. Alara stood between both sides, her mark glowing so fiercely that her skin felt carved by fire. Vladimir spoke first, voice sharp as steel. She will not be claimed by force. Fenrir answered calmly. Neither by fear. Their power clashed in the air, unseen yet suffocating. The wolves lowered their bodies, ready to leap. The vampires bared their fangs, prepared to strike. War waited for one breath. Alara stepped forward. The chamber shivered. Stop. The word was not loud, yet every creature froze. Moonlight wrapped around her, twisting like white flame. The mark burned brighter and brighter until it lit the entire hall. Alara felt her blood roar, every memory of the Lunar Queen screaming through her veins. She saw images again, wolves and vampires kneeling side by side, the queen trying to unite them, the betrayal, the fear, the death. Leadership became a wound passed through generations, and she now carried it. Alara's voice trembled, but she forced every word. I will not be owned, not by wolves, not by vampires. Fenrir's eyes narrowed, curious. Vladimir watched her like a storm holding lightning. Alara raised her chin, her breath steady now. If I must choose protection, then I choose neither kingdom. I will protect myself, and if my blood is powerful, then I will use it to protect others, not to rule them. The moonlight surged upward, exploding into the roof like shattered stars. Every rune on the floor lit up and vanished instantly, as if the chamber itself bowed to her decision. The wolves slowly lowered their heads, not to a queen but to strength. Fenrir spoke quietly, almost respectful. Your throne will be wherever you stand. The clans will not harm you. Vladimir did not bow. He stepped beside her, not in front, not above, beside. His voice carried to the entire court. The vampire kingdom will honor her choice. She is not bound to us but protected. Any harm against her becomes a crime against the crown. The nobles lowered their heads reluctantly, forced by the king's decree. Alara looked at him, unsure why he stood with her when no rule demanded it. Vladimir met her gaze, and for the first time she saw the truth beneath his coldness. Not love, not loyalty, understanding. He too had been raised to power he did not choose. The moonlight faded, leaving only torches flickering gently, harmlessly. The battle dissolved, leaving two ancient forces standing without war for the first time in centuries. Fenrir signaled his wolves. They turned and vanished into the night, their footsteps like whispers across the marble. Before leaving, he gave Alara one final look. If you ever want a home without a throne, the moon will welcome you. Vladimir turned toward Alara, his expression neutral but softened. Your life returns to you, but nothing you choose will be small now. She nodded, exhausted but certain. I do not want small, I want honest. The king's mouth lifted subtly, almost a smile. Then welcome to a life of dangerous honesty. Alara walked out of the moon chamber with her head unwrapped, the mark visible to all. Servants stared, nobles whispered, guards lowered their weapons. The court did not know what she would become, and she did not know either. But she was not a servant. Not a prisoner. Not a queen. Something new. Something the world had never shaped before. And wherever moonlight touched her skin, wolves and vampires both would remember the girl who refused a throne and claimed her freedom instead.